Hey, welcome to the party, pal. We got beer and frustration. They don't have any photos or anything like that. Oh, the irony burns up my britches so much. I'm now probably gonna get arrested because I'm in public. You gotta have britches in public, man. Fantastic.
This is a Thor News presentation. Thor News presents.
What is a planet?
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we are over at the Slate talking about one of my favorite subjects, and that would be Kuiper Belt objects, Planet X, Dwarf Planet X's, whatever you want to call it, man. We are checking out our good friend Phil Plait, and when I say good friend, I mean he has me blocked on Twitter and is probably really upset with me that I have not got my kids vaccinated. But the joke is on him. I don't have children, man. So, 2 new planets in the solar system. Not so fast, folks. By Phil Plait. A team of astronomers made something of a news splash late last week when they announced they have indirect evidence that there could be one or more massive planets orbiting in the solar system well beyond Neptune. Well, first thing that's weird is I covered this story 7 months ago. And then last week, every astronomy outlet and mainstream outlets ran with it. Like, oh my God, this is a brand new story. And I was like, WTF? Do you guys not read all the journals and stuff? Like, took you 7 months to find this story? And then did somebody give the media an okay, okay, now everybody run with this story? I mean, do you guys get your cues from government? I'm curious how media can have such a hive mind. Of course, science has a hive mind. It's like working for any corporation. You're going to support people who pay you. So that's not as weird, but when media has a hive mind, well, that's scary. And the exact opposite of what media is supposed to be, by the way. But it's great because Phil's always over here at the Slate pushing for the little man, the undefended. And when I say little man and undefended, I mean our government. Except there are two things Phil Plait doesn't like. It's people who believe in God and Republicans. A team of astronomers made something of a news splash late last week. I read their journal paper 7 months after I did. But let me be clear. Who's number one here? Their evidence of any possible planet out past Neptune is indirect. They don't have photos or anything like that. They don't have any photos or anything like that. Oh, the irony burns up my britches so much. I'm now probably going to get arrested because I'm in public. You got to have britches in public, man. It's based on a small number of objects, and we do have evidence that there aren't really big, gas giant-sized planets past Neptune. Really, do you have photos of no giant planets? Sounds great. And it pains me to even have to bring this up. And it pains him. Phil Plait is a giant supporter of half of the government. He believes Democrats do no wrong, do no evil, and they're looking out for the people. It pains him, but of course this has nothing to do with Nibiru Pottery either. Bottom line, to me this is an interesting, potentially promising line of research. But right now, it's quite inconclusive about the existence of planet-sized bodies past Neptune. Really, have you ever called dark matter inconclusive? You ever called dark energy inconclusive? You ever called the accretion disk theory inconclusive? I mean, how many actual theories in science are inconclusive? The idea that water came from comets seems to not be true. You ever called that inconclusive? How this works isn't that hard to understand in principle. Note, after writing this but before posting it, I found the Astrobytes blog that discusses this topic with more technical info. In our solar system, we have the sun at the center, and it pretty much runs everything. Even the climate, Phil? It runs everything but the climate, Phil? Alright. It has 98% of the mass of the solar system, so its gravity is in charge of how everything moves. But there are also planets that have gravity as well. Their gravity is weak compared to the sun's, but it's strong enough that, given time, the planets can affect the orbits of other objects. Out past Neptune is a region occupied by objects that are similar to asteroids, but made of ice instead of metal and rock, making them more comets, really. There are various names for them, but in general they're called trans-Neptunian objects, or TNOs. Some are circular objects, some more elliptical. Some have orbits tipped to the plane of the solar system, some don't. A handful about a dozen discovered so far have really weird orbits. They're highly elongated and tipped significantly to the plane of the solar system. The authors of the study call them extreme TNOs. Their orbits are difficult to explain from what we know about the solar system now. However, the authors note that there is a comet called 96P Machholz that also has an odd orbit. It goes around the sun backward, retrograde, relative to the planets, and the shape and orientation of its orbit change over time. This is due to the influence of Jupiter. The comet's orbit takes it out as far from the sun as Jupiter's orbit, so the huge planet pokes and prods the comet over time. This changes the comet's orbit, making it undergo all sorts of peculiar behavior. The authors then speculate that the weird TNOs may be explainable in a similar way. The TNOs fall into 4 groups according to distance, implying a series of planets at distances ranging from 40 to 150 billion kilometers from the sun. For comparison, Neptune is about 4.5 billion kilometers out. They don't give specifics about the possible masses these planets would need, except to say they would need at least several Earth masses to affect the TNOs. Again, the evidence they present is interesting, maybe even compelling, but it by no means is proof. Out of all the theories in science, and you go out of your way to point out they don't have proof of, is this one? You are an odd fish, Phil. We got you on the payroll, Phil. Honestly, Phil, I've never met someone who loved the government so much. It didn't work for them, you know? They only look at the orbital characteristics of about a dozen extreme TNOs, and it's hard to extrapolate safely from that. It seems clear that something odd is going on. But the mechanism behind it is unclear. Planets? Maybe. But it could be something else. Dark matter planets. I'll note a similar study was done with long-period comets, which also found weird orbital characteristics that could be explained by a planet or planets past Neptune affecting their orbits. Unfortunately, this too relied on a small number of statistics and is interesting but not conclusive. Okay, so you've got 2 different studies on 2 different subjects with the same conclusion, and you're calling it hogwash? But all the other crap out there science talks about, but they only have one, you're cool with that. Okay, great. You're like one of those serial debunker guys, Phil. I don't know, I guess you assume that everybody's just totally stupid. Like, everybody's just like a second grader who doesn't study. And so you have to, make the world this nice and shiny place. Except for your climate change fear-mongering and your half-political fear-mongering. And if you're such a scientist, Phil, how come you can't see that Democrats suck too? You know, I mean, there's no evidence at all that either party is good. There's not a single shred of evidence that says either party is good. Phil, you know? So for you to be so pro-Democrat by being so anti-Republican is disgusting as a scientist. Man, you are literally lying to people. You are lying out your ass, out your mouth, out your ears, out your eyeballs. Unless, of course, you think science is the only thing that matters in the world. So that, hey, having a group that can put $10 trillion worth of debt on the books in 6 years is okay. As long as they give you more money to look for dark matter. As long as they give you more money to build the James Webb Space Telescope. You don't give a shit about Obama drone striking in 13 countries. I've never once heard you, or really any other scientist, come out against war. Sure, you've written 100 articles on people who don't get vaccinated. But war, you're like, hey man, science makes a lot of money from that, so war is great. I love war. Propaganda Phil Plait. If these planets exist, they can't be too much larger than Earth. Otherwise, they'd have been seen by now. What if they have giant dust clouds, you know? The NASA Infrared Survey Observatory, WISE, has shown that no more Jupiter or Saturn-sized planets can exist in our solar system, even way far out. Personally, I'd love to have direct evidence of such planets. When I worked with the Hubble, I spent some time trying to figure out ways of finding such planets. There's no real theoretical reason they don't exist. And we see evidence of planets orbiting other stars at great distances. So why not? In the end, this research is perhaps motivation to keep looking. Even big planets would be terribly faint and difficult to detect at 150 billion kilometers. So it may be quite a while before we have a confidently complete survey of the solar system. And even if they don't exist, I'm glad people are still thinking about things like this. It's best in science not to get too complacent with the current understanding. Nature is tricky and a lot more clever than we are. Man. Good job, Phil. Hopefully the DOD cut your big check, man. Never mind, I'm gonna delete that.
What is a planet?